The date is September 2023 and Cars.co.za comes across some very interesting footage of what looks like a Toyota Corolla-based Bakkie on the back of a flatbed truck. Now we know that the video is recent because there's a Toyota Corolla Cross in the background, and that is a very new car. The video was uploaded by Ryan Hawker Motor and we reached out to him, and a big shout out because he allowed us to use the video. So what's the story here? Well, we reached out to Toyota South Africa and here's what they had to say.
Dream, search, drive. Cars.co.za.
All our silos and archies deserve insurance that pays out.
Toyota South Africa Motors has confirmed to Cars.co.za that it did indeed build a Toyota Corolla-based Bakkie, and that is the one that Ryan spotted on the road in Durban. But for whatever reason, this Bakkie never ever received the green light for production. And here's what happened. So here's a quote from Toyota South Africa. The vehicle you see in the video is indeed a prototype, but it was based on the previous generation Toyota Corolla Quest, and so of course is not in production. So Toyota South Africa is not keeping some massive secret from us. They're not developing this Bakkie at the moment. It was under study a few years ago, but they decided not to go ahead, which we think is a bit curious. As a reminder, the original Toyota Quest was based on the 10th generation Corolla, which was made in South Africa from 2014 until 2020. But it's possible that this prototype even predates the 10th generation Toyota Corolla Quest. Now, from what we can tell in the video, it pretty much looks unchanged from the nose until the B-pillar. Although, of course, from there it gets interesting. It gets a load bed and a tailgate, and what we would assume would be a revised suspension setup. Now, the half-tonne Bakkie segment in South Africa used to be a booming segment in the motoring market. However, up until recently, the only Bakkie available was the Nissan NP200. And it's always been curious as to why Toyota let Nissan rule the roost with the NP200 and didn't put a competitor on sale. And now it's about to get even worse. South Africans won't have any choice at all, as Nissan has announced that as of March 2024, they will no longer be selling or making the NP200 Bakkie. Unless something changes soon and the NP200 really does disappear, that segment, which used to have the Ford Bantam, the Fiat Strada, the Chevrolet Utility, the Opel Corsa Ute, that segment is not going to have a single vehicle available. There won't be a half-tonne available to South Africans. Now, there is a little bit of hope. Renault have been talking about bringing the Auroch here for a long time, although we'll believe it when we see it. And Volkswagen have told us that they are considering a unibody Bakkie for South Africa that will be made in their Kariga plant. In addition to that, a recent report out of the United States suggests that Toyota, at least over there, is thinking about building a Corolla-based Bakkie. However, that won't hit the market until 2027. But Toyota South Africa Motors have hinted at something along the lines of a Hilux Quest, which will be a current generation Hilux stripped down and sold at a lesser price, and it'll be sold alongside the newer generation Hilux when that finally arrives in 2025. But all of this raises the question, what actually happened to the half-tonne market in South Africa? Let's take a deeper look. For decades, South Africa had a very healthy half-tonne Bakkie market. It was largely built on the back of the Nissan 1400, which was later sold as the Champ later in its production life. And that Bakkie was very popular for one simple reason. It had rear-wheel drive. Oh, and it also cost a lot less than a one-tonne Bakkie. Now, that little Nissan 1400 was properly tough. It was built on a ladder frame chassis, and so it could cope with just about anything, especially gravel roads. And its 500 kg payload turned out to be perfect for artisans and, say, courier companies who realized that they didn't actually need a one-ton payload, and so the Nissan 1400 sold like hotcakes. And then Toyota devised a plan to get in on this market. Toyota South Africa launched the Stallion in the 1980s, and it had one up on the Nissan 1400. It was rated to carry a 3/4 ton payload, so 750 kilograms. It was a very odd looking thing, but I suppose most South Africans saw it as a mini Hilux, and so it actually proved to be very successful for the brand. Now, I remember catching a ride in a Stallion once, and it was very similar to being inside a rickety garden shed. Imagine if you took a garden shed, you put 2 seats in it and a steering wheel, and then put it on wheels and let it drive around. That's pretty much what a Stallion felt like. Although, that being said, the Stallion that I got into probably had about 500,000 Ks on the clock and was still going strong. Anyway, now, as the full specification version of the Hilux started to gain real traction in South Africa, which turned out to be a very profitable business for Toyota South Africa, they slowly gave up on the Stallion and then quit altogether in the 1990s. And that left the segment to the Ford Bantam and the Mazda Rustler, which was the same car, the Fiat Strada and the Opel Corsa utility, and those all did robust sales well into the 2000s. However, there was a key difference with all of these cars and the Nissan 1400 and the Toyota Stallion, and that is that they were front-wheel drive. Yes, the big difference with the likes of the Ford Bantam and the Chevrolet utility was that they were not ladder frame cars. So it was not a body built on a tough ladder frame chassis. They were what is known as unibody cars. In fact, they were just modified versions of the road-going hatchbacks. And that made them not quite as tough as the Nissan 1400 or the Toyota Stallion. However, if you were just going to throw a couple of surfboards in the back and a cooler box, then it was pretty much the perfect vehicle, and South Africans bought them like hotcakes. As of 2019, Nissan completely owns the half-tonne Bakkie segment with the NP200. In fact, in a good month, they'll do up to 2,000 units. So business is good, and that makes it even more curious as to why they're actually giving up on this market. The thing is, the segment is nowhere near its peak that it was in the early 2000s. So Ford hasn't bothered to replace the Bantam, and General Motors made such a mess of its utility business that even if they had a Corsa Bakkie in the works planned for South Africa, they probably wouldn't be able to revive that business here. So the question is, why does the mighty Toyota company allow Nissan to absolutely rule the roost in this segment? Why don't they develop a rival? Well, let's look first of all at how the NP200 came about, which was a happy coincidence of factors and also a result of the very, very good relationship between Renault and Nissan that maybe has soured a bit in recent times. Nissan South Africa benefited from what Renault Global had done. They had skillfully created a rugged emerging market platform in the form of the Dacia Logan, and essentially that's what the NP200 is. It's a Dacia Logan hatchback converted into a Bakkie, and luckily Nissan had the manufacturing capacity in South Africa to start putting it into series production. So all of this came together and Nissan became the only player in the market. So if Nissan could manufacture, market and develop a utilitarian front-wheel drive Bakkie with such success in South Africa, why can't Toyota do it? Or maybe the question should be, why don't they want to do it? The issue is the platform. Now, we think what would be a great idea would be to convert the Toyota Rush into what would be a really, really great successor to the Toyota Stallion. For one big reason, it's rear-wheel drive. However, to make the business case make sense, the only way to really do this would be to manufacture or assemble the car in South Africa, and Toyota's production lines are all taken up and really, really busy with their existing models. So they'd have to tool and build up an entirely new production line, and that costs a lot of money. And this brings us to the option of the Toyota Corolla Quest. Now this is made in South Africa, it has proven mechanicals, and all it would really require would be a bit of R&D into the back of the car. So from the B-pillar backwards, instead of seats and a boot, it would just require a load box, a tailgate, and probably a revised rear suspension setup, but that all doesn't seem too difficult. Now it seems to us that a Toyota Corolla-based half-tonne Bakkie would be madly popular in South Africa. And there were always rumors that Toyota had considered it, but now we know for sure that they really did consider it very seriously, as we've now spotted the prototype. The first issue is known as tooling. Now, if Toyota Global decided to make a Corolla-based Bakkie and across various countries they could share the development costs of tooling up a production line in terms of things like the body stamps, then it would make much more sense for Toyota South Africa to go ahead. However, because they'd be doing this completely alone, isolated from the rest of the Toyota Global group, they would have to carry all of those costs themselves. And to sell maybe 1,000 or 2,000 units a month would simply mean that they would never recover the cost of that initial investment. The second issue is front-wheel drive. Now, it seems that the average NP200 buyer doesn't mind that the vehicle is front-wheel drive. However, it's also true that they don't have a choice because it's the only Bakkie available in that segment. However, for true utility, rear-wheel drive is pretty much essential. Imagine trying to climb a gradient on a gravel road with 500 kgs in the back lifting up the nose of the Bakkie. You wouldn't be going anywhere particularly quickly. In fact, it would probably be quite frustrating for those owners who really want a hard-working Bakkie. And we think that Toyota didn't want to dilute their workhorse reputation by putting a Bakkie out there which was substandard to the reputation that they had grown. The final engineering problem with building a Toyota Corolla-based Bakkie is that it would be unibody or monocoque. Now, unibody design is fine for road cars. There's nothing wrong with it. It results in a very smooth ride and a very quiet car. However, if you want to build a Bakkie, you really want what's known as body on frame, where the body is separate to the chassis. This has a couple of effects. It makes it much tougher, much longer lasting, much better off-road, and much better at towing. And if Toyota, which we suspect, would have aimed for a 750 kg payload, then a unibody pretty much just wouldn't have cut it. And developing a brand new ladder frame chassis from scratch would have just been hideously expensive. And then the final issue, which is an issue that just didn't exist in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, and it's called the crossover. If you were a young, adventurous person and you wanted to throw your surfboards in the back of your car in the 90s, then you bought a small Bakkie. However, now there are an absolute plethora of crossovers on the market which do a similar job, and you get 4 seats or 5 seats, which makes them a lot more practical as family cars as well. There are so many to choose from, in fact, that every time I try to remember the cars in that segment, I actually forget. That's how many crossovers are available now on the South African market. And so while the Toyota Corolla-based Bakkie remains something that would be of huge interest to South Africans, it probably at the end of the day just doesn't make business sense. And if there's any company in South Africa that understands the Bakkie market, it's Toyota. Right, thanks very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, check out all of our 700 videos. You'll find everything from car reviews to drag races to podcasts as well. My name's Strada. I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and join us on this journey as we build the Cars.co.za YouTube channel. Right, I'll see you on the next one. Be safe.
Cars.co.za.
Thanks very much for watching. Now, if you're new to the Cars.co.za channel, we have over 660 videos on the channel right now. So go and check out our back catalog. If you're looking for a car review, you'll probably find it there. And thanks very much for supporting our channel. We are the largest motoring channel in South Africa, and the aim is to just keep working hard and bringing you the latest in car reviews and drag races, classic cars. We try and cover everything.
You can't claim that budget doesn't have your back. Sure, but you can claim via WhatsApp. Budget, the official insurer of good South Africans.